So I guess I should talk about the Flashpoint movie, right? I know I'm a little late in this, but it was a pretty big announcement. So at San Diego Comic-Con this year, it was announced that the still in development solo Flash movie has been completely rebuilt from the ground up and will now be an adaptation of the popular comic book event, Flashpoint. And this was big news. All the websites were covering it, all the fans were really hyped about it, and hell, even the actors were excited about it. So it seems like everybody's really happy about this news. Except me, but you knew that already. You read the title of the video before you clicked on it. So in order to talk about Flashpoint the movie, I have to first talk about and spoil Flashpoint the comic, which in turn may spoil the movie. So consider this your warning. In 2011, DC released the 5-issue miniseries Flashpoint, written by Jeff Johns with art by Andy Kubert. In the story, Barry Allen wakes up in a world where he's no longer the Flash and where his mother is still alive. The Justice League was never formed, Superman has been held captive by the government since he was an infant, Thomas Wayne is Batman, Atlantis and the Amazons are at war with each other. Believing that he's in a parallel dimension, Barry must find a way to get his powers back and return home. Except he's not in a parallel dimension. He messed up the timeline, went back in time and prevented his mother from dying, therefore causing all of these problems. Meaning that rather than return home, Barry must now find a way to make things right and sacrifice his own happiness for the greater good. Now, that sounds like a pretty good idea for a story, and honestly, it kind of is. Hell, it was a good animated movie, and they even adapted it into an episode of the Flash TV show. But for a live-action movie, for the first live-action solo Flash movie, I don't think that's a good idea. For one thing, me personally, I don't like Flashpoint. Let me explain. Originally, Flashpoint was to be nothing more than a Flash-centric summer event. 5-issue miniseries with a billion tie-ins to be over and done with by the fall. Except it wasn't. About halfway through the series, DC announced that they were rebooting their entire universe into the New 52, and that Flashpoint would serve as the in-universe reason for why things were changing. Much like how Crisis on Infinite Earths acted as the in-universe reason for why DC was rebooting their universe back in the 80s. And you can tell that this decision was made halfway through the creation of this story. Towards the end, you definitely get the sense that things are rushing towards the end without giving ample time to explain all the other loose ends that are going on. Most of the big story arcs in Flashpoint get wrapped up in one of the tie-in comics, while the main story is just rushing to the finish line to set up the new status quo. And because Flashpoint wound up being a reboot event for a lot of people, it means just that it's a signifier of a great reboot of an entire continuity. So does this mean that DC and Warner Brothers already want to reboot their entire cinematic universe? I mean, yeah, the first 3 movies were kind of bad, but Wonder Woman was great, and Justice League looks to be better, I guess. It looks like they're learning their lessons. I know there are those rumors that Ben Affleck doesn't want to be Batman anymore, and a lot of people feel that Flashpoint could be a good way to phase him out and introduce a new actor to the role. That leads to another reason why I think Flashpoint is a bad idea, because it leads to a lot of unnecessary confusion. Right now, movie studios think that the reason why we all love the Marvel movies is because they're all interconnected. I mean, we know it's not, but let's just say, for the sake of the studios, that is the reason. Because of this, now every movie is a tie-in to another movie. That's why The Mummy is a tie-in to Dr. Jekyll and Dracula and all of that crap. That's why Transformers is getting a cinematic universe. But all this does is lead to audience members having to do homework just to see a movie. Spider-Man Homecoming worked well enough on its own, but to get the full experience, you would have need to have seen Captain America Civil War and the first Avengers movie. Now add on top of that the idea of a continuity reboot being a part of the ongoing story. This isn't like going from Batman and Robin to Batman Begins. This is like going from Star Trek Nemesis to the 2009 Star Trek. Those are still on the same timeline, just one gets an in-story reason why they're going back in time and rebooting everything. But at least with Star Trek, that's been going on since the 60s. There's a lot of story there, and people can accept a reboot after that long of a time. The DC Cinematic Universe is barely a decade old, which leads us to my next point. DC hasn't built up to Flashpoint in any significant way. At its core, Batman vs. Superman was a combination of 2 classic DC comics, The Death of Superman and The Dark Knight Returns. Part of the reason why those comics worked is because they built on the foundation of the comic book version of those characters. Both stories dealt with the final days of comic book Superman and comic book Batman, and yes, Superman did return, and The Dark Knight Returns did get sequels, but at the time, there was a lot of weight behind it because to us, it felt like it was the end of the comic book versions of these characters. The movie didn't do that. Instead, it tried to shoehorn in these two iconic stories into one movie and make it about characters who we didn't really know all that well. We only had Henry Cavill's Superman for one movie prior to that, and most of the time he was moping around, and Ben Affleck's Batman was just introduced to us. We have no connection to him at all. And we know even less about the movie version of The Flash. We won't know a whole lot about him until Justice League. So to already do a Flash movie about a big Flash event, about a Flash reboot event, seems to me like Warner Brothers repeating the mistakes of the past. Is there a way the story could work? In a pinch, yes. If they ignore the whole reboot idea, then I think they might have a good movie on their hands. That's what the Flash TV show wound up doing. But then it just seems like they're using a recent event because that's what's hot right now and ignoring classic Flash stories like the trial of Barry Allen or even the Flash of Two Worlds. If they really want to have a solo Flash movie, then I think they should just have a solo Flash movie. Save the events for the Justice League movies, or at least let Ezra Miller get a few titles under his belt before jumping into Flashpoint. Or maybe don't even do a Flash movie. That's another good idea. I made a video about it. I'll put it somewhere. What do you guys think about a Flashpoint movie? Do you think it'll work, or are there other Flash stories that you'd rather see adapted to the big screen? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. I mean, we all know the big problem is that Barry Allen is the Flash in the movies, and all the best Flash comics are about Wally West, and you can't just change it from Barry to Wally and Wally to Barry. It doesn't work like that. We of course have new videos every Tuesday and Wednesday. Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern is Wulff Den Live. You can come, you can watch us, you can talk to us. We'll probably be talking about more DC stuff then, so tune in to see that. Like this video, share with a friend. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.